In our very first episode of Building Metal, we talked about something that Hebrew scholar Tim Mackey said, that the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. But when we come to the Old Testament, it doesn't seem very unified. It seems like a collection of different books full of complex poetry, dense and terrifying prophecies, and disconnected historical accounts. Now, scholars in the past have tried to divide the Bible into different segments to try to make it easy to connect to things. But if the Bible's a story, why not approach it as a story?
Welcome to a special edition of Building Metal, the epic story, a cinematic framework for decoding the Old Testament. The essential element that makes a story is the driving want or quest. So every passage we come to in the Bible, every person we read about, we can simply ask the question, what do they want? When we do that, we begin to understand what's going on in each scene. And just like in the movies, we see a 3-act structure unfold. Once you see this thread, it will change the way you see the whole Bible. So when we look at the Old Testament, what's the big story all about? What's the want holding it all together? It all comes down to the land. And we're not just talking about a piece of property in this story. The land is the symbol or embodiment of God's blessing and presence. It's the physical, tangible place where heaven and earth are supposed to meet, just like Eden was. It was the promise and hope for the restoration of what was lost in Eden. And pretty much the entire epic rises and falls on the relationship between these people, their God, and this one special place. Act 1 in this story is about a promise being made, through which the whole world will ultimately be blessed, and then the following generations of people yearning to see that promise come true. We're calling this first act longing for the land. And the motivation of each key person in this story is their desire to play a role in the fulfilling of God's promise to Abraham. From the very first patriarchs all the way to the people enslaved in Egypt, the big hope is that they'll finally get what was promised. And that promise had 3 parts: a people, a blessing, and of course, a land. And this period of longing actually starts before Abraham, after the promise that a seed of the woman would come, all the way back in the Garden of Eden, on through the flood and the Tower of Babel. Then things get really focused around 2200 BC when Abraham gets his call. God tells him that he's giving him a place where the promise will come. From there, we follow his family all the way down into Egypt. And then after hundreds of years of slavery, the people ask God to deliver them. And God sends Moses to lead them out. And by 1400 BC, after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, there they are, standing right on the edge of the land, about to walk in. So where do the actual books of the Bible fit into all this? Well, this first act includes Genesis, which lays all the groundwork and tells us about the promise in the first place. Some scholars set the book of Job during the time of the patriarchs, so it gets included in this act as well, asking huge questions about suffering. And then you get the next 4 books, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. You can think of them as one giant continuous story, the epic tale of the escape from slavery, the long journey towards the land, and all the laws about how to maintain sacred space for when they get to the land. And that brings us to Act 2. The long wait is finally over. The dream is now a reality. This is the era of living in the land, where God's presence abides in the tabernacle and then the temple. But as you can probably guess, there's a huge difference between getting what you want and keeping it. The next act is full of amazing victories, but it also brings a whole new set of massive challenges. There's a major shift in the mindset here. The want now changes to possessing the land, defending the land from enemies, and figuring out how to resist the idolatry of the people around them, living in the land, keeping God's law in a way that lets them stay in the land. The stakes get a lot higher. This era begins around 1400 BC. First, you have the conquest with Joshua, which is then followed by this really chaotic time of the Judges. Then by 1050 BC, things really come together. The nation unites under the powerful kingdoms of David and Solomon. This is the golden age. But that glory doesn't last. In 931 BC, a civil war literally splits the kingdom right down the middle. And by 722 BC, the northern part of it is totally conquered and wiped out. Much of the Old Testament comes from this really turbulent time. Of course, you have the history books that tell the story, like Joshua, Judges, the books of Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings and Chronicles. But what's really interesting is that this is also when you get all the incredible poetry and wisdom literature. Books like Psalms and Proverbs. They're not just random collections of nice sayings. They are the direct result of people wrestling in real time with the huge question, okay, we're in the land now. How do we live here wisely? And that split, that moment of division, is the critical turning point of the whole story. The nation fractures into two separate kingdoms. The kingdom of Israel up in the north and the kingdom of Judah down in the south. And from that point, they have different kings. They have different prophets speaking to them, and ultimately they have very different fates. It's the north that falls first, which sets the stage for the final tragic act of the whole drama. And so we come to Act 3, losing the land. It's just as tragic as it sounds. All the consequences of that division, of the infighting, and especially the idolatry, it all finally catches up with them, and that incredible blessing, the very thing that defined who they were, is taken away. The capital city of Jerusalem and the temple, where heaven and earth meet, are destroyed. And this is where the core desire, the want, shifts one last time. It's all about trying to restore what was lost. It's a longing that's filled with a painful memory of what it was like to have everything and then lose it all. So, after the northern kingdom of Israel fell back in 722 BC, the southern kingdom of Judah managed to hang on by itself for a while. But then in 587 BC, their time ran out too. They were conquered and the people were dragged off into exile in Babylon. About a generation later in 538 BC, they're actually allowed to go back and start rebuilding. But it's not the same. It's not their land. They don't own it. A fraction of them come back to live there, but they're ruled by the Persians, then the Greeks, and finally the Romans. What's more is that most of them decide to live in other countries, scattered throughout the known world. They never get back to that golden age, and this long, slow period of decline eventually ends, centuries later, with the final total destruction of their capital city and temple in 70 AD. This tragic era is the backdrop for some of the great prophets that you read about. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and all the minor prophets such as Hosea and Zechariah. They weren't just foretelling the future. They were right there in the middle of it, trying to help people make sense of this catastrophe, to get their hearts in the right place as it was unfolding, before, during, and after the exile. And then the later books like Ezra and Nehemiah, they tell the bittersweet story of coming home, documenting the massive struggle to rebuild. So, when you step back and look at the big picture, you can see that it's one story. A promise is given in Act 1, and then there's a huge struggle to get it. In Act 2, it's finally possessed, and then in Act 3, it's tragically lost. But in the middle of that loss, the prophets foretold of a day when it will all be restored, that there will be a place where heaven and earth meet, a sacred space through which the whole world will be blessed. Or maybe this epic 3-act drama, the story of longing for, living in, and then losing the land, isn't really about a place at all. Maybe the real plan was that the land would not be where God's presence would dwell in a temple built with human hands, but a place where there would be a human temple. The prophets talk about a coming person, a seed, a root, a tender shoot, a branch who was the presence of God himself. The hidden mystery is that from here in this promised land, Israel's Messiah would not come to restore Israel's kingdom, but to bring God's kingdom and ultimately fulfill Abraham's promise, bringing the new Eden to all the nations of the earth. Here are some tools to take with you today. Number 1, it's a good exercise to ask the question, what is the want that drives my story? Number 2, longing, living, and losing is a life pattern that can either lead to despair or hope. And number 3, God literally moves heaven and earth so that you could choose hope. We'll be back again soon with more episodes of Building Metal. The music of Building Metal is a production of Jed Brewer and Good Loud Media, Oak Park, Illinois. Also special thanks to Christ Community Church, Oak Ridge, Tennessee.